Welcome back, ScreenRanters. If there's two things all people can agree on, cartoons and over-the-top fight scenes are just the bee's knees. So we're going to combine the two for today's video. We're going to look at all of the best, most outrageous fight scenes in Family Guy.
You can't hit me, I'm a girl!
Sometimes I wonder.
The show's been running for over 2 decades. With that, there's many scenes involving fisticuffs. You'll see some involving celebrities, parodies of famous film scenes, battles that are the result of years of resentment, and many, many more. So grab your copy of Surfin' Bird by the Trashmen and let's get started. We kick off with one of the most intense battles of all time. The epic battle has been brewing for over half a century. It all takes place in the episode The German Guy. Near the start of the episode, Franz Gutentag delights us with an amazing puppet dance and extremely catchy song. No, seriously, it was stuck in our heads for days after first seeing it. Anyway, by the end, we know Franz's true history, and throughout, John Herbert had been warning the Griffins, only it was ignored and considered jealousy due to Herbert's unhealthy obsession with Chris. The puppet man had actually run the prisoner of war camp that Herbert was at. The two dress up in their former military uniforms to duke it out, only now they're really old and not quite as mobile. After such moments as slow motion striking, falling asleep, and needing help from the nurse to stand up, eventually Franz is slain. He tumbles off the step outside and begins to fall dramatically. Herbert attempted to save his nemesis, but he was unable. With his enemy vanquished, Herbert could save Chris and Peter, who had been locked up by the German foe. For the longest time, Brian and Quagmire haven't been too close. In fact, they pretty much hate each other.
Because now she's dodged the bullet of being in a relationship with a loser like you.
Highlights for their disdain includes when Brian smushed booties with Quagmire's dad, when Brian ripped off Glen with a terrible property, that time Brian dates Quagmire's lost soulmate, Cheryl Tiegs, in order to get back at the Q-Man. Wow, Brian is the cause for most of their problems. While the two have fought before, the season 18 episode Catfight had been a long time coming. In this episode, Quagmire had opened up a cat cafe next to Brian's favorite bar. He hated it.
Hey, shut up!
The two began to fight. This led to the cafe being closed. Now, Quagmire had to live with a shed load of cats. At the end of the episode, Quagmire had removed the cats with a big fiery gesture. As he locks eyes with Brian, the two battle, only stopping briefly when Brian attempts to bite the water from the sprinkler.
You thirsty boy? Yeah, you're a thirsty boy. Wait a minute, we're fighting! Oh!
As Brian attempts to escape, he ends up being hit by a series of buses. Badly injured, Quagmire wraps a piece of cloth around Brian's arm, which miraculously heals him of all his injuries. The two then reconcile and walk off together. Since Family Guy was created, they had taken numerous shots at the rulers of animated shows, The Simpsons. Well, by 2014, we were finally getting the long overdue crossover between the two titans of funny. The episode was titled The Simpsons Guy. After a falling out over beer,
beer tastes exactly like Duff. It's just a lousy ripoff.
Hey, whoa, whoa, whoa!
Homer and Peter begin one of the most elaborate fight scenes of all time, one that also birthed a meme in the shape of Ralph Wiggum's chuckling about being in danger.
I'm in danger!
We see many cameos of characters and locations from Springfield as they battle all over town. At one point, they even get superpowers, which makes them both go from chunks to hunks. We also get a brief cameo of Roger from American Dad as the powered fighters fly into a UFO. Eventually, the powers disappear. Then they end up at the infamous canyon where Homer previously attempted to jump across on a skateboard. Nostalgia. Before Homer can commit a Mortal Kombat-esque fatality, it backfires. However, it's cartoons, so he's fine. The two battered TV dads set aside their differences and move on. When Trump was going to be parodied in the Family Guy episode, Trump Guy, fans were anticipating what the creators were going to do. Were they going to make fun of the president or make him look good? Well, for those hoping for a dramatic, funny fight, they won't be upset. After working for the US president, Peter catches Donald being horrendous to Meg, so he quits. Soon after, Peter baits Trump into an epic brawl by calling him cash poor.
Cash poor.
It's filled with many nods to the mythos of Trump, such as Melania not so secretly despising her husband by helping Peter in the golf club duel, the many glamour photos and portraits of Trump put up in the White House, and many more. At one point, Trump goes all Medusa from Inhumans and uses his hair to get the upper hand in the skirmish. Due to the grand scale of the battle, we even get a cameo by the Chicken, the character that regularly takes part in elaborate brawls with Peter. After battling, the two have to be saved by the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau. Since the show started, Joe Swanson has always been in a wheelchair. It all happened after a horrific injury as a police officer. But once we get to the episode, believe it or not, Joe's walking on air, he gets the ability to walk again, all through a leg transplant. Ignoring how that's scientifically possible, Joe is able to enjoy all the things that he was unable to do, such as sports and whatnot. Well, Peter, Cleveland, and Quagmire aren't fans of the new Joe, so they try to injure him once again. What great chums they are, huh? However, Joe is one tough cookie. He's far more athletic than the others. After all, they spend most of their time in the clam rather than being sporty. Joe single-handedly batters his friends with little issue. Even with Peter, Cleveland, and Quagmire being heavily armed, Joe beats them up. After winning, a new challenger approaches, Bonnie with a firearm. She wants her husband back, so instead of talking about it, she shoots him many times. But she misses the areas that would put Joe back in the wheelchair, so he does it for her. See? True love. Throughout the history of Family Guy, Ernie the chicken and Peter will regularly come to blows. The reason is usually due to something very minor. Then they go on a massive journey of fisticuffs with many explosions and cartoon violence. Well, we decided to only include one of their fantastically famous fights, alliteration, in today's list. We went with the big one in Internal Affairs. All it takes is a little fender bender. The fight starts off like most, lots of props and locations, but then they end up on Stewie's time platform. Firstly, they end up in the Wild West, which also shows that Back to the Future 3 is canon to the history of Family Guy. Thanks to the DeLorean, they're back in the present day, but the battle is far from over. Next, they're at a cloning facility and produce multiple copies of themselves also fighting. The carnage causes an explosion that sends them into space and then to an oil rig, with Peter getting the upper hand and setting up round 78 in the future. After Brian tweeted out an inappropriate comment, the whole of the Griffin family became pariahs in Quahog in the episode The D in Apartment 23. When Meg and Chris arrive at school, they meet a load of hostile students. While channeling the church scene in Kingsman The Secret Service, the two go on a rampage. They utterly wreck everyone that dares to pick a fight with them, all complete with Freebird playing the soundtrack to the slaughter. They use a variety of weapons, such as shards of a lunch tray, a flagpole, cutlery, and much more. Chris and Meg especially are likely taking out years of neglect and mistreatment out on these poor kids. The two show off fighting skills that only those in action films possess. It helps that most of the students only attack one at a time, otherwise it would be unfair. Considering all of those students that perished or were severely injured, there's no repercussions for the Griffin teenagers. After the canteen clash, Brian too has a moment to go all Colin Firth, but he walks away instead. He was in enough trouble anyway. For the episode 3 directors, Family Guy has the same story that Peter gets fired, only it's told as a parody by 3 different film directors. The first of which is all about Quentin Tarantino. After playing with Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs, and so on, we eventually get to the battle with Angela. Using Kill Bill for inspiration, the fight scene takes place. Peter, dressed as Ronald McDonald and wielding a sword from Thundercats, lays down the challenge of combat for revenge for his job and his family being slain. Angela calls forward a battalion of Trisha Takanawas to battle. Just like a video game, Peter must fight the underlings before reaching the boss. He battles the Takanawas and defeats many in grotesque fashions, such as forcing one to drink a load of beer until she pops. Yeah, that's grim. After taking them all down, only Angela remains. She charges towards the clown-dressed Peter with a blade in each hand. Instead of an epic sword fight, Peter ends the battle very quickly, very visually, and very anticlimaxingly. Mostly due to the Taken franchise and strapping bottles to his hands in the gray, Liam Neeson has a reputation for being a massive tough cookie in Hollywood. He's basically the newer version of the Chuck Norris memes rolled into one. So with that in mind, Neeson had a guest role in the episode Fighting Irish. In this episode, Peter showboats that he could beat up Neeson, but he's unable to follow through. In exchange for not being pulled like Stretch Armstrong, Peter agrees to be Neeson's unpaid helper. However, after being encouraged by the guys, Peter tries to fight Neeson. It doesn't go well, at least for Pete. That just felt wrong calling him that. Anyway, Neeson wrecks Peter. He throws him around and through the trailer. Peter only gets one successful hit off on the Oscar-nominated actor. It only makes the Star Wars performer angrier and shows shades of the Hulk. In the end, Peter is utterly overwhelmed by Neeson, who cemented his tough guy persona more so, at least in the cartoon realm. We finish off with the classic fight scene from Family Guy. It all takes place in the episode Patriot Games. Technically, this isn't just one scene, as many mini kerfuffles happen throughout the episode between Brian and Stewie. At the beginning, Stewie becomes a sports bookie. He encourages Brian to bet on a boxing match. When Brian ends up losing, Stewie begins to ask for the money. However, Brian keeps putting it off. Well, the Griffin toddler hits his limit. As a result, he starts laying the smackdown on Brian while yelling, "Where's my money?" at the dog.
Where's my money, man?
Later, Brian spots Stewie near the stairs. He attempts to use a disguise to get past Stewie, but it doesn't work out. Once again, but more forcefully, Stewie batters Brian, even setting him on fire. On the plus side, it works. Stewie gets his money.
All right, let's go to the bank.
But Stewie has now damaged the relationship, so he offers Brian a free shot to make up for it. With Brian refusing to say when the punch will happen, Stewie beats himself up in stress. Near the end of the episode, Brian got his revenge. He pushed Stewie in front of a bus, which was a bit much. And that's a wrap. Which of these Family Guy fight scenes took your breath away the most? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video and you want to see more, please like, share, and subscribe. All those actions really help us out. Finally, thanks for joining us today. See ya.